And we just decorated the house. We had kids that are really cute, and I have a little friend, a close friend, Slash, who's my boyfriend's son, who's really, really cute.
Cher kept mum for over 10 years on her relationship with the late music icon Leon Russell, despite the fact that it was one of the most subtly influential partnerships of her life. At the age of 78, she is now speaking up, and the truth she shares is profoundly personal, honest, and emotional. Come along as we explore Cher's long-awaited confession, the history of her relationship with Leon Russell, and the reasons for her decision to stand up at this time. Cher did not act indifferently, but rather out of respect, when she decided to stay quiet about her connection with Leon. Now she has admitted that she kept quiet about him for almost 10 years, and it wasn't because he was unimportant. He was extremely important. The emotional terrain was just too complex. Their friendship was based on real honesty rather than theatrics. It was intimate and passionate, but not in the way tabloids would have you believe. As artists working in a profession that often prioritizes performance above genuine honesty, they understood each other's battles with the emotional toll of celebrity, loss, and solitude. Renowned for his prowess on the piano, profound lyrics, and expressive arrangements, Leon Russell was widely regarded as a musical genius. Nonetheless, Cher saw him as more than simply a fellow artist or colleague. His music expressed emotions that she frequently struggled to express. He was a spiritual companion and an emotional interpreter. In unseen but very important occasions, they worked together behind the scenes. Their connection became stronger over these periods. They found solace in the music they made, which went beyond just sound. His songs were an essential part of Cher's emotional vocabulary, and she recalled how they lived inside her. Even after the lights in the studio went out, his songs and lyrics continued to reverberate. Cher's tone softens as she contemplates Leon's creative brilliance. She brought up the fact that Leon was more than just a musician. He was a conduit. Prior to anybody else, he could feel the music. She describes how Leon could make a piano weep and turn quiet become something exquisite during their private jam sessions and studio time together. He was more than a musical collaborator to Cher. He was an influential figure with the extraordinary ability to grasp a song's core concept prior to its composition. Cher goes on to say that Leon's unique blend of gospel, blues, and rock shaped her musical tastes and the tastes of a whole generation. Even now, she admits, Leon's melodies and phrasing frequently reverberate in her mind when she gets ready for rehearsals or meditates. Russell's music, particularly his compositions that capture the spirit of spiritual yearning and Southern tenacity, never fails to move her to tears. These were more than just performances. They were genuine prayers. Even at her most reflective moments, she can still make out his voice in his music. The audience was taken aback by Cher's profound emotional show as she spoke about their love. They were bound together by more than just music. They were also bound by a common vulnerability. She talks about how they would talk on the phone late at night, how they would encourage each other when they were going through tough moments in their professions, and how they would discuss openly topics like celebrity and loneliness. What they shared was unique, she says, and they understood one another without explanation. Cher has been mum on the subject of any romantic involvement, despite widespread speculation to the contrary. On the contrary, she stresses a deep friendship at the level of the soul. According to her, he grasped the nature of her suffering even before she could articulate it. Cher gives the impression that Leon was a generous soul who understood what it was like to be an outsider in a field that values perfection, who listened more than he talked, and who gave without expecting anything in return. Cher was devastated by Leon Russell's death in 2016, but she chose not to openly discuss her grief. she has recently come clean about how her years-long emotional wall included this silence. She went on to say that actors are taught to portray power rather than sadness on stage, and that audiences are more interested in the glitz than the tragedy. But she was mourning hard behind closed doors. Unexpectedly, a deluge of emotions washed over her at Russell's passing. Along with the loss of her artistic collaborator and friend, she was also burdened by the unfinished business they had begun working on together. The songs they never finished, and the apologies that would go unheard. She says it's like navigating through fog, fighting off despair when everyone else thought she should be all smiles and eyeliner. Her loss had really taken a toll on her. Their connection was very secret, which made her feel even more alone in her mourning. No memorial services were held. Quiet news. She carried her anguish alone. Cher says that she didn't suddenly decide to open up. Rather, it was a slow process. The agony seemed to recede into the past. She began to think about her legacy, both her own and Leon's, as she approached the age of 78. He would not go unremembered. She was adamant. She wished for the world to recall the introverted, deranged, and extraordinarily gifted guy who had been her acquaintance, the one who composed the music. In addition, she started to see that telling their tale was more than just paying tribute. It was a way to heal. By talking about Leon, she was able to see the hush not as a mark, but as a component of their mutual experience. She clarifies that the point isn't to feel remorse, but rather to appreciate what they had while knowing it wouldn't last. Cher offers a moving tribute and life lesson in the later portion of her comments. She encourages her fellow artists to love what makes them special. Instead of changing to fit in, Leon always made the most of any circumstance. Now that is strength. She gives her readers a heartfelt reminder that love stories aren't always about romance. Some are made in the dark corners of our hearts, in the spaces between our words and our emotions, or via the medium of music. If that's the case, how did they actually get along? There was a special link between Leon, a musical genius famous for his work behind the scenes, and Cher, a famous pop star and TV personality. Even for some music historians, the details of their first meeting are murky, but the complex web of their lives together makes it easy to see how these two artistic titans came to have such a profound bond. Cher, whose real name is Sherilyn Sarkisian, first appeared in the early 1960s on the Los Angeles music scene. Hits like I Got You Babe propelled her to fame as a member of the Sonny and Cher combo, but her career started in the depths of Los Angeles' recording studios. Cher lent her voice to timeless hits like Be My Baby by the Ronettes, while working as a session vocalist for legendary producer Phil Spector before she became a cover girl. Claude Russell Bridges, better known as Leon Russell, was a young Oklahoman artist who was causing a stir in the studio at the same time. Among the illustrious members of the Wrecking Crew, an informal confederation of elite LA musicians who performed as session players for many different acts, including Frank Sinatra and the Beach Boys. Even virtually nobody outside of the music industry knew his name back then. His piano work was on many hit singles. Their paths probably met in these busy, smoke-filled Los Angeles studios in the 1960s, not in a formal introduction, but in the few minutes between takes and amid packed vocal booths during late-night sessions. A lively and close-knit atmosphere pervaded the studio. It seemed as if everyone knew each other. If you could play an instrument, sing a song, or offer any other kind of contribution, there was no need for an official introduction. A lot of talented people congregated at Phil Spector's studios, often requested for last-minute harmonies. Cher, who was only beginning her career in her teens, was renowned for her unique contralto voice. On the other hand, Leon could be seen playing the piano with great dexterity, creating intricate arrangements and laying down the groundwork for future work. Singers and session musicians who could pivot and perform well under duress were Spector's bread and butter, since he was famous for his wall of sound. Cher and Leon were both molded by this setting, but they weren't only cogs in the wheel, they were the engine. Coming out of hiding, Leon Russell started penning songs, producing records, and eventually going solo. In the late 60s and early 70s, he was already co-founding Shelter Records, touring with Joe Cocker, and making genre-bending solo albums. Additionally, Cher was going through a metamorphosis. Her acting career catapulted her to a new level of stardom, and her solo endeavors began to depart from her original pop character. But she never wavered from her musical commitment, and her choice of partners revealed her deep respect for multi-genre performers like Leon. They probably started to perceive one another as a kindred spirit at this time of transition, when they were both stepping out from the shadows and claiming their rightful place as artists rather than merely actors. Isolation is a common side effect of popularity in the entertainment industry. This fact was very much on the minds of Cher and Leon Russell. Leon was reserved and enigmatic, while Cher was fiery and fearless in public. Despite their public personas, they were both desperate to hide from a culture that eats its stars alive. The isolation that comes with celebrity, especially for women, is something that Cher has spoken frankly about. For a long time, people failed to see her creative talent and perseverance, and she had a hard time getting the credit she was due. Similarly, Leon was often referred to be a musician's musician, despite his immense talent, and was much respected by his peers in the music industry, such as Bob Dylan and Elton John, but mostly disregarded by the general public. The emotional basis of their friendship was probably built on this shared experience of being misunderstood. Their bond was very personal, not romantic, as Cher recently reflected with emotion. They had an uncanny knack for recognizing one another. The hardships of being an artist and the anguish of carrying unspoken suffering were understood by them. There was no major public disagreement or rift between them. That much is true. It appears that life's inevitable progression is the cause of their separation. Workplaces evolve. Time changes priorities. As people go through life stages, they may inadvertently lose touch with those who were previously crucial in their development. It's likely that their last conversations were heartfelt but unfinished, and that neither of them realized how fast time was passing. Leon and Cher were both dealing with the big careers in their own unique ways. Their lives just diverged as the years passed. While Cher became increasingly prominent in movies, television, and popular pop culture, Leon retreated into the background of the music industry, prioritizing artistic autonomy above financial fame. Time and the inevitable separations that come with a career in the arts eventually made their deep emotional connection, which they had for so long, fade into the background. There was probably no animosity between them. Rather, they just went in separate ways in life, which led to a gradual decline in their level of daily interaction. Lessening physical touch, however, does not mean less feeling. There were countless ways in which the love remained unsaid. Looking back, Cher realizes that Leon stayed in her mind the whole time. His music, his spirit, and the memories they shared continued to play softly in her mind, making him an important character in her life. Changes occurred all throughout the globe as time passed. From pop music to acting, and from comeback albums to residencies in Las Vegas, Cher's career went through yet another metamorphosis. Everyone in the music industry, but notably Cher, felt a crushing loss with Leon Russell's passing. But Cher never said a word. Her anguish manifested itself in her quiet, something many did not realize at the time. She opens up about a common past that none of them had really accepted, which led to an unfinished business between them. I would say that's the most relatable part of their relationship. Missed calls, postponed visits, and unspoken comments are common markers of the silent end of genuine relationships, especially deep ones. The fragility of relationship when life moves at the speed Cher and Leon's did was the real reason they had to separate, not animosity. The narrative that stays isn't about a disastrous breakup or a relationship that fizzled out. It's about two people who met, fell out of love, and never really cut emotional links. There is no dramatic climax or quiet sigh that marks the end of all relationships. They just stand still. Leon Russell, whose given name is Claude Russell Bridges, was born in Lawton, Oklahoma in 1922. He displayed his exceptional skill for the piano at an early age. He began taking lessons at the age of 4 and was playing in Tulsa nightclubs as a teenager. Although Leon's right hand was slightly impaired by cerebral palsy, he developed a distinctive left-hand technique that would later characterize his forceful approach. He began performing under the alias Leon Russell, which came from an imposter's ID when he was 17 years old. He shared the stage with Jerry Lee Lewis and became heavily influenced by the raw gospel rock fusion that would later shape his style. As a member of the legendary Wrecking Crew in the 60s, Leon rose to prominence as a top session guitarist in Los Angeles. Phil Spector, Jan and Dean, Bob Dylan, Frank Sinatra, Barbra Streisand, and the Beach Boys were among the legendary artists he collaborated with on recordings. He was famously gifted musically and could hold a tune down or bring it up a notch. According to Herb Alpert, whenever he played, the rhythm section would seek him out. His skills and rising fame were on full display in his work on Phil Spector's Wall of Sound and his participation in the TAMI show in 1964. It was in the middle of the 1960s when Russell's first solo efforts surfaced. Though it failed to chart, Leon's 1965 single Everybody's Talking About the Young, which he released after becoming a member of the innovative duo Asylum Choir with Mark Beno, provided a crucial setting for the development of his style, which was based on gospel-infused rock and psychedelic exploration. With Denny Cordell, Leon co-founded Shelter Records in 1969. The label became a creative incubator, producing such luminaries as Freddie King, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, J.J. Cale, Phoebe Snow, and Dwight Twilley. In addition to giving him a venue to showcase his work, his record company revolutionized the 1970s Southern rock, blues, country, and folk music scenes. Tracks like As A Song for You and Delta Lady were used on his first self-titled solo album, which featured contributions from Eric Clapton, Bob Dylan, George Harrison, Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, and Ringo Starr. An important turning point was reached with this album. Leon became the center of his own universe. The 1972 album Carney peaked at number 2 on the Billboard charts and contained songs like Tight Rope and This Masquerade, which George Benson took to Grammy-winning heights. His electric stage presence and devoted fan base were on full display in his live records, especially Leon Live, 1973, and Live in Japan, 1975. In addition to being a musician, Leon also served as band leader and event organizer. In 1970, he oversaw Joe Cocker's Mad Dogs and Englishmen tour and record as musical director. He also led the Shelter People on tours that regularly grossed about $3 million. Not only was his gravelly voice and forceful piano playing instantly recognizable, but so were his top hat and beard. He dabbled with country, honky-tonk, and bluegrass while performing as Hank Wilson. On his gospel-influenced album Will-O-the-Wisp, which had top 40 songs like Lady Blue, he delved into blues rock with Guitar Blues, classics with Life Journey, and Christmas hymns with Christmas Hymns. In addition to assisting Freddie King in recovering his career, he co-produced Willie Nelson's gold-certified 1979 album One for the Road, which peaked at number 3 on the country charts, and oversaw Bob Dylan's deep piano-driven records in 1971. When it came to production and business, Leon Russell was in a league of his own. He created the Sky Hill home studio, used proto-synths and programmable drum machines early on, and started his own production companies to make music videos before MTV. Nonetheless, he went through slumps due to personal issues, such as money problems, bigotry he encountered in his interracial marriage, and a number of scandals. Among his many achievements, his very touching ballads stand out. The song, "A Song for You," often considered his magnum opus, took him less than 10 minutes to compose and was created out of intense need. As an example of the scope of his creative vision, Leon once said that it was meant to bridge the musical worlds of Frank Sinatra and Ray Charles. Donny Hathaway, Herbie Hancock, and Aretha Franklin are just a few of the nearly 200 performers that have covered the song. George Benson's Grammy-winning 1976 version of This Masquerade became popular, even though Leon had recorded it earlier in 1972. Soul and pop fans both may relate to the song's deep lyrics and jazzy beat. The music video for Tightrope, which is from the album Carney, displayed Russell's talent for combining visuals with narrative depth. The song itself offers a playful yet twisted commentary on the precarious existence of a performer. Leon's lyrics often reflected his inner conflicts, such as the contrast between stardom and loneliness, love and heartache, faith and despair. He revolutionized piano playing in contemporary music by fusing gospel, blues, rock, and jazz into a style that was at once percussion-heavy, raw, and incredibly real. Without Leon, there wouldn't have been an Elton John. Elton John famously said, often disregarded in popular discourse, Leon Russell's career is decorated with illustrious partnerships. His 60s stint with the Wrecking Crew gave him unmatched adaptability. From the echo-laden pop of Phil Spector to the folk rock of Bob Dylan and the lounge soul of Frank Sinatra, he moved with lightning speed. While performing with George Harrison and Ravi Shankar at the 1971 concert for Bangladesh, he was instrumental in a mashup of Jumpin' Jack Flash and Young Blood that culminated in an electrifying gospel-like crescendo that fused British rock with American soul. His collaboration with Joe Cocker resulted in Mad Dogs and Englishmen, a live record and tour that rock fans will always treasure. In his roles as musical director, arranger, and keyboardist, Leon's charisma saved the tour from imploding under the weight of its own anarchy, and it catapulted the careers of countless artists, establishing him as a legendary star-maker. Tom Petty, J.J. Cale, Phoebe Snow, and Freddie King were among the artists that he helped develop when he and producer Denny Cordell established Shelter Records in 1969. Leon steadfastly protected the concepts of artistic purity and creativity, which Shelter epitomized, even when it meant risking his own financial security. He pioneered artist-controlled spaces with his Los Angeles studio, Sky Hill Studios, where bands could record according to their own schedules and preferences. Russell was a legendary figure in the music industry, but his star faded in the 80s and 90s. He fell into relative oblivion as a result of changes in taste in music, turnovers at record labels, and personal problems including failed marriages and financial loss. His interracial marriage to fellow singer Mary McCreary caused him to endure racist criticism, but he persisted in recording and touring for a dedicated cult following nevertheless. Their gospel-infused 1976 wedding album was another proof of Russell's resolve to defy industry norms and social biases. Before Elton John stepped in, Leon Russell had all but faded from public consciousness by the 2000s. Elton was taken aback by Leon's exclusion from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, so he openly supported him and helped revitalize his career. Their 2010 duet, The Union, was an attempt to reclaim Russell's reputation rather than just continue his work. The Union, produced by T-Bone Burnett, was widely acclaimed by critics and debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200. The documentary that accompanied it beautifully depicted the profound bond that formed between them as mentor and protege. This renaissance persisted with Elton John's executive-produced 2014 musical autobiography, Life Journey, which featured American classics, blues, and gospel. Tours picked back up and sold out in other places, demonstrating that the world was still thinking about the master of space and time. Leon Russell was inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2011. Elton John, who became visibly moved as he thought about Leon's immense influence, presented him at the event. Although he was sick until the year 16, Leon kept making songs and touring. Posthumously published in 17 years after his death, On a Distant Shore was his final studio album. Fans were given a heartfelt send-off with its introspective themes and lush orchestral arrangements. After Leon's death on November 13, 2016, the music industry lost a true icon and a guiding light. Heartfelt condolences were expressed by icons like Bob Dylan and Elton John, as well as modern singers like Tori Amos and John Mayer. "Last night, my beloved Leon Russell passed away," Elton tweeted. "He was really helpful, encouraging, and a role model for me. He will forever be loved by me." Legends adore Leon Russell, but the common public mostly disregards him. His existence is a paradox in and of itself. Everything about his music was enchanting, as he deftly moved between gospel, country, blues, soul, rock, and jazz. He was the glue that held the folk of Dylan, the glam of Elton, the soul of Cocker, and the Eastern-inspired rock of Harrison together. Songs by him, like As Superstar, which he co-wrote with Bonnie Bramlett, are staples in live performances, whether by wedding singers or Grammy tribute groups. Additionally, Shelter Records was an early adopter of the concept of independent artist empowerment, long before it was cool. Respected for his versatility, Leon could compose solemn gospel hymns one minute and rousing barroom tunes the next. His refusal to be boxed into a specific genre may have been the reason the business never got him. But for those who paid attention, he was the embodiment of all three roles: prophet, poet, and pioneer. A lot of new musicians are sampling his songs, and his name keeps popping up in podcasts, movies, and conversations about music history, so his influence isn't going anywhere. A linchpin of American music, Leon Russell was and is an institution unto himself. Is a guy's legacy limited to records alone, or does it encompass his offspring as well, when considering a man of his ilk's magnitude? Leon Russell had 6 children from 3 separate relationships when he was a famous artist. He wed Carla McHenry in 1972, and they had a son named Blue Bridges, sometimes called Baby Blue Eagle. An example of Leon's profound respect for culture and creativity is shown in the fact that he named his child Blue after A.C. Blue Eagle, an artist from the Oklahoma Creek tribe. Henry Bridges had 2 children, Teddy Jack and Tina Rose, from his first marriage to singer Mary McCreary. Later in life, Teddy Jack collaborated with Leon, continuing in the musical and producing footsteps of his father. Leon had 3 daughters, Sugary Noel, Honey, and Coco Bridges, from his second marriage to Janet Lee Constantine. The father and daughters remained very close. Coco and Sugary were notable for their background vocals on their father's last studio album, On a Distant Shore. Leon was notoriously reserved about his private life, but his offspring, particularly those with musical careers, carried on his heritage. In addition to carrying his lineage, they personify his distinctive creative energy. Like, subscribe, and click the next video button on your screen if you like this one.